All right, literally walking in on you guys here. We just got here. So have you ever been to, I'll say it wrong, but Wailua Falls?
I went there yesterday.
Yesterday. Did I say it right? So we just went up the river and kayaked up, hiked in there, and here I am. And our flight's at 9 o'clock, so we're on our way. I got to put up, so, I don't know. I was back there just trying to catch my breath, but so good to be here, you guys. We got a little tour of here, I think it was Wednesday when we flew in, and had a chance to get kind of the mission and vision behind Anchor House and just love it. I was going to do something like this when I was your age. Capernwray, if you ever heard of Capernwray, I was going to go to Capernwray, Australia. And then God I thought I was like, hey, God, I'm doing this thing, going to go to Bible school for a year, and he kind of reshaped my path. So I'll tell a little bit of my story today with that. And I think with the time that I have, today is just going to be for me a chance. I've got a story to tell you that I think will hold your attention, that I felt like, honestly, the reason that I'm still on this planet and living life every day is that God kind of used this story in my life to, afterwards anyway, to say, hey, any chance you get a chance to share this story, you need to share it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm still here. And I think you'll understand after I share it. And so when Pastor Rick said that he would allow me to share my story with you, a little bit of that today, I took the opportunity to say yes. So that's kind of why I'm here. But I'm going to give you like 3 or 4 little like sayings that if you want to write them down, you can. You don't have to, but just little things that I guess have prompted me in my life's journey and my story, and I'll weave it in and out. And I think it would be helpful for you as well if you take these things to heart. And so I'll kind of give you a few of those along the way as I share my story. But the first one is go until you get a no. Go until you get a no. And that I really believe that you'll experience God in ways that most people do not if you kind of live under that umbrella of surrender to just say, God, I'm going to go until you give me a no. And whatever it is, wherever you're taking me, I'm just going to believe that your story is better than my story. And I'm going to head in that direction until you flat out put the brakes on and give me a no. And so go until you get a no. So my story began in, I know there's one Canadian in the house. Where are we? He's out with his family. Anyway. So yeah, I'm originally from British Columbia, Canada. And I just became a U.S. citizen in June of last year. So now I'm a dual citizen. So that, but I've spent actually more of my life in the United States than in Canada. It just took me a long time to go down the citizenship route, but it finally went through. But yeah, I grew up in Canada, and the first question people always ask was, then how did you get south of the border? And I was one of those weird Canadians that didn't play hockey every day, but I played baseball. And so baseball's not as big up north of the border as it is down here. So I got one of the first baseball scholarships in my part of the province of British Columbia, ever outside of the country. And so I was set to go to Capernwray, Australia. I was then set to go to Briarcrest Bible College in the middle of Saskatchewan, which I believe this particular is it male or female? He's from Saskatchewan. So it's Saskatchewan guys, I don't know what he said about it, but it's just like there's nothing there. It's just flat, nothing, farm ground. And this Bible school is out in the middle of nowhere. I had a lot of family members that went there. And so I thought, I'm going to follow suit and do a year like you guys are doing and just kind of take a gap year and just kind of settle in and just really focus on what God's will for my life would be. And that was my plan. And you think that's a good plan. And I was playing in my final baseball tournament, kind of like what you'd call like the state tournament. So it was kind of the provincial tournament. And so we were playing in that and had a really good tournament, playing really well. And there was a gentleman sitting next to my dad that just was kind of parked there and watching the game and started asking about me, not knowing that that was my, that my dad was the guy that he was talking to. And he said, you know anything about that kid out in center field? And my dad's like, yeah, a little bit. And so anyway, that led to, after that game, this particular individual came up to me and said, hey, where are you playing baseball after this? I'm like, this is it. This is my last tournament. And then I'm heading off to a year of Bible school. And he goes, have you ever been asked to play anywhere else? I said, nope. He says, you ever been offered anywhere? Nope. He goes, would you be interested if I could make that a possibility? I'm like, perhaps. And I said, so who are you? And he goes, my name's Jim Chapman. I'm a scout for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I really like what I'm seeing you, and I think you have a lot of potential. I think you should play at the next level. And so that, within 2 weeks, redirected my life, and had to tell my best friend that I was going to go off to Bible school with and be roommates for the year, that I was not going to be doing that, and he had to find a new roommate. So bad friend there moved, but that's kind of the path then that led me south of the border, at which point I played for a few years and then met my wife, who's probably join us here in a little bit, but she's from Indiana. And so we got married, and in 1995, a long time ago, probably before most of you were born, and so we graduated together, same weekend, got married 1 week after graduation. And I got injured in college, so baseball at the next level didn't happen for me, and that's okay. And we moved to Virginia, and then we moved to Colorado. And then we were in Colorado for 3 years. That was a little bit more like home for me, being from the mountains of British Columbia. And I was out on my porch one morning right after our second child was born, and felt like God just said, write a letter to a particular guy that I knew of in Indiana. And I was like, God, why would you want me to write a letter to him? And he just said, write a letter. And so I wrote that letter, and within 3 weeks, we were heading to Indiana on a very lateral move. It wasn't for some big promotion or new job or anything like that. It was just one of those moves where I felt like God said, I have work for you. It's in Indiana. I know that's not your preferred home, but that's where I want you to go. And I'll let you know when you get there. And it's kind of one of those go until you get a no, and just follow me, trust me, and I'll, one step at a time. He wasn't going to give me the whole play, but he gave me part of the play. And so off we went, and I'll backtrack just a little bit. In Colorado began what in me was just a burning, just a desire to be in ministry of some kind. But I never had a box to fit myself in. I never saw myself. I grew up in church, kind of, I would say, prayed my first prayer to receive Jesus into my life at the age of 5 before I really knew what I was doing. But at about age 14, I really made that commitment. But in Colorado, I just felt like I felt like God saying, you're going to be in ministry someday. But my education was as a physical therapist. So I was a medical professional and trying to think, how can I be in ministry if I have a medical background and I have no ministry training? But I felt, and I never had the box to fit myself. Didn't see myself as a senior pastor or a music pastor or a youth pastor. Didn't have all the boxes that I saw ministry. Couldn't see myself fit in any of those boxes. And so that began 7 years where I just was like, God, like I felt like that's where I was heading, but I didn't know what that meant. And so I just kept saying, God, just show me. That's when he said, go to Indiana. And so in Indiana, we're there 3.5 years. Nothing was happening. I was getting very frustrated, and I was like, God, you said move to Indiana, and you would show us the next steps. 3.5 years in, nothing's happening. And so I started my own business and thought, okay, God, I'll show you. If you're not going to show me, then I'll show you that I'm going to start my own business and do it your way. And that's kind of how I'll make something happen. I'll make ministry happen through my medical background. And so I did start that business. It was growing. I was still doing a full-time physical therapy work, and then our third child was born, and life was just going nuts. I was working all day. I was working every evening. My wife wasn't happy. And we were just facing a crossroads of, all right, either we're going to go full in on this business or something's got to change. And at that moment, our lead pastor of the church I was attending asked me out to lunch, and basically that began a conversation where he began sharing a vision for the church, which I was all about. I said, how can I help? I'd love to support you. I've led small group Bible studies before. I can do those kinds of things. And he goes, no, I'm asking you to consider quitting your job as a physical therapist and joining our team as a full-time discipleship pastor. And I was like, hey, time out. I've got no training. I'm just a physical therapist. What are you doing? He said, we just think God's brought you, to us, and we just want you to pray about it. That began 6 months of prayer with my wife, and we felt like, again, go until you get a no. Go until you get a no. And that led to a decision to leave my job as a physical therapist, enter full-time ministry in 2003, And it was the best decision we've ever made. And we're still in full-time ministry going. So that leads me to Dad Camp. Dad Camp began 3 years into my ministry run. And I just had a passion for reaching the hearts of men, knowing and seeing that in the life of the local church, that we see churches that are filled with more or less women and children. 60 to 70% of our churches are women and kids. And I was like, where are the guys? Where are the dads? Where are the men leading their families? Where are the men to serve? Where are the men to rise up? And so I'd seen men's ministries come and go over the years, and I just saw them start up with a bang, and then they just kind of fizzle out. I just never seen any sustainable ministries that would really target and reach and capture the hearts of a man. And so we thought, you know what? Despite a guy's faith, I've never met a guy that looked me in the eyes and said, I want to be a bad dad to my kids. And we thought, maybe we can reach them through their children. And so we started a thing called Dad Camp in 2006 with a vision of just local discipleship for guys. It was a weekend that's designed to target. We target dads, but kids get to come alongside their dads and have a great weekend with them where we create all kinds of fun, create kinds of memories, but our curriculum, our content, and everything is rooted and driven towards the heart of a dad. Why are we so passionate about that? We call it the father factor. This isn't something I made up or a name I made up. You could read about it if you want in the social sphere. You can read it in the spiritual realm. But in the social realm, you can talk about crime, domestic abuse, behavioral disorders, addictions, teenage pregnancy, anxiety, depression, everything that's dominating our headlines today. When you read the news day after day after day, we're seeing all of these issues that are unraveling our families and our communities. And you can put each one of those in its own bucket and you can study them. You can say, what's going on? Why is there so much of this happening? And you can study this one and you can study this one. And in all of them, there's only one common denominator that's in every single one of those buckets, and it's a weak, absent, or disengaged father that's present in 70%, or roughly about 70% of each one of those problems. You'll find that at the heart of it, there's a weak, absent, or disengaged dad. And so we said, get our dads back. And experts say, not me, I'm not the expert, but experts say that if we could just get our dads back, that those problems would go away by 70% or more across the scope of things if we just had dads leaning in, serving, loving, and leading their families well. And so we said, they call it the father factor. And so we said, we got to get dads back. We got to get them, because nothing impacts the health and well-being of a young person than a healthy father. So that's the social side. The spiritual side, maybe you've heard these kind of statistics before. Again, if this research is even if it's wrong by a fair bit, it's still overwhelmingly just impactful to me. And it's one of the studies is that 93% of a family will follow a father in his faith. If a father's not the first to follow Christ and to lead his family spiritually, that number will drop to 17% if it's a mother who finds faith first and tries to lead her family to Christ. And if neither parent is leading the way, then 3% of kids will find Christ. And so 93% to all the way to 17%. Even if that number was 40%, it's still overwhelmingly what we're seeing is dads matter. Dads matter. Dads need to lead. Dads need to lead the way spiritually. So there's a spiritual father factor. There's a social father factor. That's what drives our ministry. And so I'll stop there with the part with Dad Camp, and I'll get into the story that I wanted to share with you today, and I'll come back to Dad Camp a little bit more at the end. The next thing, so go until you get to know. The next thing I wanted to tell you was just write down, just tell your story. Tell your story. Here's a part of my story. It was November of 2010, and a part of my job at the church that I was pastoring at was to do outreach, and part of that was international outreach. So I began leading teams to the country of Haiti back in 2009. And in 2010, I took a team of 14, including my son, who was turning 13 years old at the time. I thought this would be a great way to initiate my son kind of that next step maybe into manhood, and we can go and we can serve together, and we can have an adventure together. And so my 13-year-old son, he turned 13 on this trip, came with me. And the trip was going great. We were there to help another local church do like what they would call a crusade, or maybe some would say a revival, but we were to help them just reach their community. And the numbers were going every night. It was started with a couple of hundred. We were in the middle of a bean field, had no technology whatsoever, but we did our best to We built a stage. We had a generator. We just trying to get some power. We had a band. We were just doing everything we can to help support this local church. And it was each night the crowds were growing. And it was about the fifth or sixth night that we were there. There's probably 2,000 people on that night that came out in this bean field. And everything was going great. And we went to bed. It was about 11:30 at night. The last person kind of shut her down. And it was getting, you know that point when you're sleeping or you're falling asleep and sometimes you hear things and you're like laying there thinking, am I hearing something or is that a dream? I don't know if you've ever been in that kind of place before, but that's where I was. And I began hearing this voice say, someone's got to help Bruce. Someone's got to help Bruce. Someone's got to help Bruce. And I was laying there and I opened my eyes and someone's got to help Bruce. And so I sat up. And the guy, a team member sitting next to me, sat up, and we looked at each other, and then it was like, this is real, that we're both hearing this. And so we walked up out of this bedroom, and we were kind of in a back corner, and we walked up this hallway into a kitchen area. And I would say this is fair to say it was about a room this size. Maybe a touch bigger, but I think this is really accurate. About a room this size. It was a kitchen, and we were on the second floor of a building. Downstairs was a medical clinic. And we were on the upper floor was where the guests would stay that would come in to serve. Medical teams, outreach teams, all sorts of teams would come throughout the year to this particular outreach place. And so we're there, and we walk into this room, and one of our team members, a female by the name of Linda, she's yelling, someone's got to help Bruce, and she's pointing, and it's pitch black, no electricity, there's no power, and it's just pitch black, but she's pointing to the window. There's a window above the kitchen sink. This is a room that's kind of a half kitchen, and then you'd some area to sit and eat. And there was a sink with an exterior window. And again, we're on the second floor. And I could suddenly see a light. I saw like a beam of light, and I could see Bruce. She's saying, someone's got to help Bruce. And I could see that he was struggling, but I didn't know what was going on. And then the next thing I know, he went out of my vision, and he was pounding on the wall. There's the window, and then there's the door that we would go in and out of. That was here. They're about 6 feet apart. And between the window and the door, he's pounding, and suddenly I start to hear his voice over Linda's voice, and he's like, "They're gonna kill me! They're gonna kill me! They're gonna kill me!" And I'm like, what is happening? He had decided that night to sleep outside on this deck. He had done this before. He had been to Haiti many times. We never thought much of it. And so he's on this outside deck, and I thought, is he having a bad dream? Or what is going on? And he starts pounding on this door. And so the door is pounding, and I'm like looking at my friend, and I'm like, what should we do? And his name was CB, and door's pounding. I said, stand back, CB. And I open the door, and Bruce is there, and I just grab him, and I just throw him as hard as I can past me. And he goes, kind of goes stumbling by. And then I take the door and I try to close it. And as I'm trying to close it, suddenly I just hit resistance. And there became a fight for this door. And so my friend and I are pushing one way, and there's resistance coming the other way. Then the yelling, then the screaming started to happen. And it's a different language. They speak Creole. So I don't know what they're saying. They don't know what I'm saying. But all I know is I don't want them in, and they want to come in. And then suddenly a third team member and I joined me, and we had 3 of us pushing on this door. And there's this struggle. And Bruce, meanwhile, the guy that I run, he's yelling, "It's for real, boys!" And he's an ex-military guy, kind of a tough-looking guy. He's like, "It's for real." He goes, they're trying to kill us, and so we don't know what is happening. But there's this fight on the door. At that point, a 2x4 gets through the bottom. They put like a 2x4 the base door, so we couldn't get it all the way closed. And then a crowbar they stuck through a little bit higher, so there was 2 points and we couldn't get the door closed. But we were winning the battle for the door at this point and keeping it somewhat closed. And I just had my shoulder down as hard as I could and was pushing as hard as I could. And I was eye level with the door handle. And the next thing I hear is a friend behind me that's pushing over top of me. He's yelling, "Gun, gun, gun!" And I looked up, and I'm staring right 6 inches from my face. I'm staring at this gun. And honestly, guys, I thought, this is it. This is probably it. And so I just put my head down, and I'm just waiting. And within a few seconds, they did pull the trigger. And the bullet went right above my head, and it hit my friend right above me. It actually hit him. It hit him in the hand. And so CB is his name. He's shot in the hand, and there's one shot been fired. And Meanwhile, there's this happening on the door. There's that window that I talked to you about earlier above the kitchen sink. That suddenly gets bashed in. There's a table coming through it. They're throwing furniture into this window, trying to take it out. And next thing I know, they're starting to fire on us from this window. They're starting to fire at us through the door if they can. And then there's another window over here that they started to break through that they're starting to fire in from there. And so within 6 to 8 feet of me in both directions, there's 3 gunmen that are shooting on us. And this is when what I will say, all hell broke loose. And so we had no way of defending ourselves, that we weren't set up for that. And so we're just staying on this door. And it's weird. I don't know if this was a Holy Spirit kind of thing or not, but in that moment, in all the craziness and the chaos, as I'm leaning on that door, I heard 3 words, and I heard change the play, change the play, change the play. And it took me back to an old message from my lead pastor who had said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. If you want to make changes in your life, you got to change the play. You got to change the direction. And for some reason, those 3 words came to my mind. And so there were 2 other guys at the time here holding the door. And I said, guys, I'm going to make a run for it back to the bedroom where I'd started. And if you guys do what you got to do. But I feel like I'm going to go back there. I've got a backpack with our contact information. I got a cell phone in there. Let me see if I can call emergency. And so we, try to get some help. And so they're like, go for it. As this was going on, Bruce, who was the guy that originally was attacked, he was running around trying to find different weapons. We was things like Coke bottles, and there were knives that he was sliding knives across the floor to us. I don't remember seeing any of those. I just remember hearing those stories. But he's trying to find, and he's kind of running around, and suddenly he yells that he's been shot. And so he had been shot in the arm. So now we have 2 guys that are shot, and there's just nothing good going on. And so I make a run for it down this hallway, and a team member came with me. His name was Brad. And the one thing I'll never forget the rest of my life from this particular incident was running down this hallway. It was maybe 20 to 30 feet, but I felt like I was the good guy in like a superhero movie. I guess they could say like the Avengers or something like that, when you're like, how do the good guys never get shot? All the bullets flying and all that. I'm running down this hallway, and I'm just hearing the bullets just choo, 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 going past me, hitting the walls, hitting the floor, dust flying, walls like bullet holes while we're running down this hallway. And we get back to the bedroom. I dig my stuff out, and of course, just like a bad horror movie, the cell phone doesn't work, can't get any cell service, and so that plan is shot. And so I remember telling you guys that my son was on this trip. He had turned 13 2 days before that. He was sleeping next to me, at the very beginning of the story, when I popped up and heard someone's got to help Bruce, he was in the bed right next to me. So when I got back, so now we're into gunshots ablazing, people screaming. Everything that you can imagine. Loud, screaming, yelling, gunfire. And when I got back to the bedroom to find my son, or to look for my son, he was still sleeping. And most people, when I tell this story, or a lot of people, they'll smile at that, or they'll be like, think that's funny. It's classic 13-year-old. Of course he's not going to wake up. But if you could have heard the volume, if you could have heard the intensity of what was happening, it's my opinion that there is no humanly way possible for someone to stay asleep during that kind of terror and that kind of intensity. But he was still sleeping. And so I woke him up, and he was like shocked, and I put him under a bed in a far corner of the room, told him to stay there. After this incident ended, and I'll end it here pretty quickly, we found bullet holes in the wall right above his pillow. And if you can imagine, if you're a 13-year-old and you wake up to something like that, the first thing you're probably going to do is, where's mom, where's dad? And he would have walked up that hallway I just told you about, trying to find me, and I'm convinced that he probably wouldn't have survived. And so 100% convinced of how God, kind of kept his hearing from working in that moment, and kept him asleep until I got back there. But so we got back there. My friend says, we tried to kind of head back up towards where the setting was happening. started taking on gunfire again, and we retreated back in the room. We're like, that's not going to work. How do we get back up to help our friends? And so I just decided, being the team leader, I said, something has to change. We got to get help. And I said, there was an exterior window in this bedroom, and I said, I'm going to jump out that window and see if I can get to help. And my friend's like, that's suicide. Like, you're just jumping out. Like, that's a terrible idea. And I said, I got to do something. And so my son was under the bed. I said, tell him to stay there. And without really thinking about it, I just pulled that window up, and I just jumped out of a 2-story window building, barefooted. Didn't know what I was going to be jumping into or what landing on. It was pitch black, but I just felt like this need to get to help or try to do something to change the situation. So I landed in a flower bed, a dirt flower bed, thankfully, missed a concrete sidewalk by a few feet. I just kind of barrel rolled and stood up and started running. And I had to scale a couple of big perimeter fences that they'd used for security. And for whatever reason, the bad guys didn't see me. And I was able to run about a half mile to the missionary's house and wake him up and say, it was just screaming terror. I was just like yelling, saying, wake up, we're under attack. And so he woke up. He had 2 handguns, and he put a handgun in my hand, and he took one. We hopped in his truck, and I was worthless, you guys, at this point. The shock. I felt like I'd broken one of my ankles from that jump. I felt like I was just worthless, but I've got this gun in my hand, and we end up on the way up stopping and waking up one of my Haitian friends. And he comes running in, and I give him the gun, and I told him on the way up, I'm like, guys, like, this is absolutely for real. I don't even know who's even alive at this point. And those 2, we got up there, and those 2, without hesitation, just went straight into the line of fire. And when we got back up there, things had kind of got quiet. And or at least it seemed like it was quiet. And as soon as those 2 went back into the building, there were 6 gunshots, just bam, 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 bam. And I thought those 2 then were shot as well. And I thought, okay, now I'm on my own. Now I'm by myself. Thankfully, as it turned out, those 6, there was that exchange of gunfire, but no one was hit. And the bad guys were scared, knowing that, there's resistance coming from the outside now. We got to get out of here. And they bailed, and we never did see them. They were never found. We don't know why they attacked us. But in the end, 4 of our team members were shot. And I'll explain just a few things. That the reason I wanted to share this, and I didn't say this at the beginning of the story, is do you ever think, like, does God still work like he did in the Old Testament, like Daniel in the lion's den and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like fiery furnaces? And does he still do that kind of stuff today, like we read about? And I'm going to just explain like a few of these miracles. But the one was when I reached, if you remember the very beginning, I reached and got my friend Bruce in. After this incident, we were meeting as a team, did a lot of post-traumatic counseling. He met with me, and he said, hey, check this out. And he shows me his arm is just black and blue. And I thought, because he had been shot in the elbow, I thought that was just, from the gunshot wound and the trauma from that. And he goes, no. He's like, Jason, this is where I got shot. And he shows me. He goes, this is where you grabbed me and pulled me in. And his arm on that side looked way worse than the gunshot wound. And he said, I call this my life grip, the term death grip. And he goes, I call this my life grip. And guys, I really believe I was given, when I grabbed him, he actually was tied up by the wrists. They had him tied up by both wrists had him tied up with bed sheets they had torn up. They had tied him up, and they had a gun to his head. And I didn't know any of this in the moment. When I opened that door, I just wanted to save my friend or help him. I didn't know what was going on. And so when I tore him loose from them, I ripped him out of those sheets that they had him tied up with. And thankfully, the guy that had the gun to his head didn't pull the trigger. And so he says, Jason, this is my life grip. But I honestly believe I was given a power that was not of my own in that moment. That saved Bruce's life. So that's one. The 4 guys that got that shot. One was through the elbow. I don't know how many of you guys are medical or any kind of interest in that stuff, but the bullet went in and came out and didn't break a bone, nothing. Just like, if you think of your elbow, there's no room for a bullet to go through and not cause some damage. But it went in, it went out, and he had really nothing but a flesh wound. That was another one was a shot to the hand that turned out to be just a flesh wound. The other 2 were shot in the legs. One, the bullet went right in and right out. And if you would draw a line between where the entry point and the exit point went, like straight line, his femur, his femoral artery should have just got shredded. Just got a blown, he should have died. But it just went in, it went out. And then the fourth one was a bullet that, again, went in and sat in the back. They had to remove it again, but nothing got broken. There was, he was bleeding quite a bit. We had to keep that under control for a while. But again, if you look at the paths of these bullets and you look at where these guys got shot and that there was anything but more than flesh wounds, you can't explain this stuff, you guys. We had 4 girls on our team, and they were back in a closet praying the entire time. And they were like just thinking, what point are they going to come to get us after they thought all of us were dead. But the one girl stopped counting at 35 gunshots. She goes, I just stopped counting. And so if you can imagine, I said 8 feet each way, 35, like 3 guys shooting on us at point blank range, and none of us got seriously hurt. 100% believe, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We were in a fiery furnace, just not getting burned for whatever reason. There's the miracle of my son and not waking up. There's the miracle of me jumping out of a 2-story window and not breaking anything and being able to get to help. And I still actually have some pad damage in my feet that every day I wake up, and for like 3 to 5 feet, I'll walk, it'll hurt, and then it goes away. But it's just that reminder to me that God's just like, remember what I did, remember what I did, remember what I did. So I'm very thankful that I still have that. But that was all the damage for me. And then the last thing, so windows are getting busted all over. There was glass like everywhere. When we went back in after this ended, there was glass like just covering the floor. None of us had shoes or socks on. We were all running around barefooted, went through all this, crawling, diving, rolling around in it. Not one person had one piece of glass in their skin after the fact. And so I tell you all this to say, I really truly believe God is still doing miracles like he did in the Old Testament. I believe that I lived through one, and I believe I've been saved to kind of keep telling that story and to remind people of his bigness, of his sovereignty, that he's a good God, and he'll do amazing things to get our attention. And I want to read Psalm 124 to you, because after we got home, so this happened around midnight, and about 2, 3 in the morning, the word started getting to Indiana and our homes that we had been attacked, something bad had happened. People started waking up. No one knew at this point how bad we weren't hurt, when we were getting home, how we were getting home. And so when my wife found out about what had happened, she called her family. And my mother-in-law just got out of bed and did what she does. And she's a praying person. And she just opened the Word, and she didn't have a specific place to go. She was obviously probably very traumatic. Her grandson and her son-in-law have just, something's bad has happened to them. And so she just got to where she said, I just opened the Word and to pray. And she says, I just opened, God just took me to Psalm 124. I didn't go there thinking of it from some past, I want to go, that's going to comfort me or anything like that. But I'll read Psalm 124 to you. It says this: what if the Lord had not been on our side? Let all Israel repeat. What if the Lord had not been on our side when people attacked us? They would have swallowed us alive in their burning anger. The waters would have engulfed us. A torrent would have overwhelmed us. Yes, the raging waters of their fury would have overwhelmed our very lives. But praise the Lord, who did not let their teeth tear us apart. We escaped like a bird from a hunter's trap. The trap is broken, and we are free. Our help is from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And so I couldn't have received that in that moment. I was trying to deal with the trauma of what was happening, and it certainly wasn't a moment where we were going to be sitting down and having devotions in the middle of the night in Haiti, having 4 people trying to get them to hospitals, trying to get away out of the country. But God is speaking here to my mother-in-law and reminding her of what he was doing and what he was up to. And so when I got home, she shared this with me, and it was just amazing comfort. Just amazing. This is a modern day Psalm 124 story that I just lived. Literally, I just lived. And so I have to tell people. I have to tell every single person that I'm given the opportunity to tell about what he did on that night. And so that's truly what I believe happened on that night. And so I said, tell your story. That's just a little bit of my story. You heard a little bit of what's taken me to dad camp and then what took me this trip. But there's such power in your story. No one can argue with your story. You can't tell me that God didn't do something supernatural that night. You can't just say that's just a great story, that's circumstance. God did something that I can't explain. In a room, 35 shots, no one getting killed, my son not waking up, no glass in our skin, me not breaking bones, my friend Bruce getting freed when he's tied up, has a gun to his head. All these things in a matter of 30 minutes. You can't tell me that God wasn't up to something beyond our control and saving the day and doing something miraculous. And so you all have a story as well. And so I encourage you to, as you're sharing with your friends, as you go out into the world and you're talking to friends that have doubts, and to remind them of this story. I want you to, I heard this story, and whether or not they accept that as truth, being it's third party or not, but use stories like this in addition to your own story, because no one can argue with your story. No one can argue when God's done something in your life that 100% is Him and not you. And then as you tell your story, tell His story. That's what opens the door. You share what God's done in your life, you tell your story. People love story. That's why Jesus shared stories so much. Tell His story after you have shared your story. And so that's my second thing. Then the third thing is that I really believe that your greatest adventure, and if you want to write this down, that you can. You don't have to, but your greatest adventure is on the other side of your pain and suffering. Your greatest adventures in life are on the other side of your pain and suffering. Some might say it this way: never let your pain and suffering dictate the boundaries of your freedom. Never let your pain and suffering dictate the boundaries of your freedom. See, there's an enemy. The thief came to steal, to kill, and destroy. He wants you to sit in your pain. He wants to sit in your suffering. He wants to sit in the brokenness. He wants to steal. He wants to kill and destroy. But Jesus said, I come to give you life to the full. We have to go through that pain. We have to go through that suffering with Christ. And on the other side is the abundant life, I believe. And so many people, because it's hard to go into the pain. It's hard to go into the suffering. And so it's just easier to stay over here. They miss out on so much that God has for them if they just would be willing to step into that pain, step into that brokenness. And a little bit how that's played out in my life has been a year later, after that Haiti story, I felt strongly that God said, well, let me time out for a second. When I got back, I told my wife, never again will I take a group of people under my leadership, under my responsibility, and put them in that type of a situation again. 4 people got shot. My son was with me. I'm never do that. I told God, that's it. I'm out. I'll serve you locally. I'll do what you want, but I'm not ever doing that again. That's it. And about a year later, I felt strongly said, God say, go back to Haiti. Go back to Haiti. And because I started to work there, and the evil one got in the way through that, and He'd stopped that, and there's more work to be done. And so if you don't go back, that story can't be finished. But trust me and go back. Enter that pain. Enter that suffering. Go back into that, and you're going to find there's a greater adventure on the other side that I have for you. And so a year later, we felt a peace about me going back. And so I did go back. I've been back 10 times since. I've taken my 2 daughters with me 4 times each, I believe. That country and those experiences with my daughters has changed their life. It's changed their faith. They would say that they've never seen God at work more than in those moments when we've gone and served in Haiti together. But also, there's the story of Dad Camp, and I'll bring back the Dad Camp story. Dad Camp began just locally in Indiana, and we didn't have much of a vision for it beyond reaching dads and fathers in our community. And we started with elementary dad camp. So you'd come with your elementary age kid, which is kind of what we just did at Camp Halikoa this past weekend. It was awesome. And but then as we grew, the dads of these kids were getting older. They're like, hey, my kid's in middle school now, And this being a dad thing is getting a little more challenging. Middle schoolers are different than elementary. And so is there dad camp still for us at that level? And so we created a middle school dad camp. Well, then those middle schoolers went to high school. And they said, well, what about me in high school? Whole other set of things in life that high schoolers going through. And this thing being a dad is tough. You got something for me for Dad Camp High School. So we created Dad Camp High School. What we did with Dad Camp High School, what was different was we said, let's not just create a camp for them to go to. Let's create trips that dads can take their kids on, and they can go serve together. And we can create conversations on these trips where they can grow in their relationship with one another. They can grow with God together, but they can also serve together because what I love what you guys are doing. You've kind of said, I'm going to surrender my own life for a year to go grow with God for a year in community. So many people in your age group and teenagers today, I would say that their focus is like life's about me. Life's all about me. It's focused, like what's in it for me. And so we wanted as dads, we want to say, hey, like if there's one value we can teach our kids, let's try to say like life's not about you. Life's best served in the context of serving other people and loving other people. So let's take them on trips. And so we did that. And after that first trip, one of the ideas was, if you guys have ever gone on trips before, there's always a project. There's always, what are we going to do on that trip? How can I fit into that project? Well, we said, what if the project is dad camp? What if we go to Haiti and actually create a dad camp for dads and kids in Haiti, just like we've done here in Indiana? And so we tried that, and it rocked us. The response was incredible. Well, then some of our team members went back home and they put their pictures on Facebook, things like that. Hey, had a great trip, did our first dad camp in Haiti. Well, suddenly missionaries and churches in their friend groups and in their social media spheres started reaching out saying, hey, what is that? Would you bring that to our country? Would you bring that to where we're at? And we're like, go until you get a no. Go until you get a no. And so that's been our posture. Go until we get a no. And Dad Camp is now in 12 countries all over the world. We're now in 12 locations across the United States. And so, our belief that God is going to grow Dad Camp into 25 countries, reaching dads and families in 25 countries around the world and 25 locations across the United States by 2030. And so now we're in that realm of this adventure of seeing God reach hundreds of families to now we're reaching thousands of families. And we believe that God's going to reach hundreds of thousands of families through this ministry. But it all started, you guys, with being willing to enter the pain and the suffering and to go back and trust God. And then he just blew the gates open and said, all right, now we're going to go some places. We're going to go somewhere. And it's been an amazing, I have to, waking up today and here I am in Kauai, being part of a dad camp. Who would have ever thought? I think my buddy DK in the back said this morning, he goes, Jason Braun, that's my name. He said, Jason Braun in 2006, thinking that someday dad camp is going to be reaching dads, in Hawaii. And it's just like, no, absolutely not. And on Saturday as well, we had dad camp happening in Portugal. We had dad camp happening in Uganda at the same time it was happening here. And so we've built out, we've built teams, we've reproduced ourselves. We have leaders in those countries that are directing their own dad camps. And so it's just, it's an incredible privilege to be a part of. But again, your greatest adventure is on the other side of your pain and suffering. And so the last thing would just be, I always hear, I don't know if you guys ever heard of Erwin McManus, but he talks about he says, be dangerous, live a kingdom adventure. And so as you wake up every day, just say, God, help me to be dangerous. Kingdom adventures are, you got to be open-handed. You got to be willing to go into territory that may feel uncomfortable. You got to step into places where maybe you feel underqualified, but God uses He equips the under-equipped. And that's how he does things. And so we want to, with Dad Camp, we're like, all right, dangerous is like we're going to be growing into 25 countries and all across the states. But it's not about us. It's not about our thing. This is just his ministry. We just get to be a part of it. It's just all about reaching the heart of a father, knowing that everything changes when you reach the heart of a father. Families win, communities win, our world wins. And so that's what is driving us. And so, and lastly, as I finish my story, along the way, the most critical element in all of this as you guys live your lives is stay humble. Stay humble. I think last year what I learned most in my Bible reading throughout the year was just how God honors a humble man or woman. I mean, he answers when men and women humble themselves, he moves. He moves. And man, he also moves when we're prideful in the other direction. When we make it about us or think it's about us, He moves the exact opposite. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And so it's all about him, and just let him use you, will him to stretch you, go into that pain and suffering to experience your greatest adventure. And I think you're going to live a story that so many people will not experience because they're not willing to go to those places with God in their faith. And so really encouraged. I've got a 24-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a 20-year-old. And so coming into a room like this to see that generation, your generation, here doing what you're doing is so encouraging for me, for my wife, for my team, just to be like, you know what? It's going to be okay because we got you guys coming behind us to keep growing the kingdom. And so really proud of you guys, and thank you for allowing me a chance to share my story today. So thanks, guys.
What if some of these guys wanted to get involved in what you're doing, Dad Camp?
Yeah, so we have an intern program that is, just like, you guys I know have chosen specialties, and we had 6 awesome students with us this past weekend. So that was huge. When we came here a couple weeks ago, we did not realize what Anchor House was. We didn't, for one. 2, and the level of excellence that you guys were going to come and serve alongside of us and to help us make Dad Camp what it was. And so, that was incredible. And so we've got sites all over, the United States. We're really, really heavy in the Midwest. Indiana, we're going to have 21 camps over a 10-weekend period in August, September, and October. So Indiana, Ohio is where we're really concentrated and building out from. That's and then we've got we got a camp in Pennsylvania. We have a camp in Texas. We have 5 or 6 camps this year in Montana. So those are ways that if you wanted to get a hold of us, say, hey, would love to come out for X number of weeks and serve on these weekend events. That would be something and ways that you could do it. Another way you could do is serve with Dad Camp is to go on an international trip with us. When we take a team to Uganda or we take a team to Guatemala, we're all through we're in Guatemala, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Uganda, Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo, Portugal, France, Ukraine. Ukraine obviously is on hold right now. Haiti. Haiti's on hold right now with all the up there. But if you're like, you know what, I'd love to go on a trip. And rather than do some of the more traditional mission trip kind of stuff where, we go and we maybe paint walls or dig a well, or those are all great things. But you're like, hey, I want to be a part of an event where we're going to create this really fun atmosphere for dads and families to be built into, and I'm going to work with kids and at these events. We do 3 to 5 events in the course of a week. We go to different locations throughout the country. So if that would be something you'd be like, hey, I'd love to do something like that, we would love to go with you. Absolutely, yep. And if you have a dad that want to join you on a trip like that, even better. Like they'd say, hey, get a hold of your dad and be like, hey, let's do this together. It's a big win. So those would be the 2 best ways. Yeah.
How would we get in contact with you?
Dadcamp.org is our website, dadcamp.org. And then there's a contact button on our website. You can just contact and just say, just put a little comment box for sure. Yep.
If you want his personal phone number, so you can call him late at night.
Okay, yep. Pastor Rick's got it.
What's the base material you're using? Is it directed to Christians, to non-believers, both? Is it even about Christ at all, or is it just about your?
No, it's 100% faith-based. The gospel is presented at every single Dad Camp in some way. So that is 100% our focus. But Dad Camp is for dads. You can be a Christian dad, a non-Christian dad, a dad of another faith, and we want to welcome you at Dad Camp. But all of our team, and our core ministry is from a Christ-centered position. And so we always say, you can be a great dad without a faith in Jesus, but we think you can be an even better dad with Christ at the center. And so it's all faith-based content. I write most of it, but we usually build it around. We'll take like a favorite book of mine on being a dad that comes out. I read a lot, and I'll build a weekend event around a particular theme or a book, and we'll build themes in and around it throughout the weekend, and kind of lead guys that way. So that every year the content changes. So it's not like you come to dad camp with your child and the child's in second grade, and then next year dad camp comes back and you're like, oh, I've done that before. The content changes every single year. So we want to disciple dads. And so the content changes each and every year. And so that's our promise to dads is like, hey, this is an annual deposit in your life. This isn't just a one and done camp thing, like a fun, cool activity I do with my kid. This is a discipleship tool for me as a father, because there just isn't much out there for guys. And so we wanted to create an annual tool for that. And so we also have a podcast. It's called the Dad Nation Podcast. If you check that out, or if you wanted to let your dads know about it, we've been doing that for 2 years. First Saturday of the month, we do an episode every month. That's just another way for us to disciple fathers, is through the podcast. So, good question. Any other questions? Or any questions about the Haiti story or anything like that? Yeah.
Where in Indiana?
So Central, we are in Kokomo. So, but we've got camps north of Kokomo, just west of Kokomo, down by Louisville. So, you? We're apart.
Central Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just probably north of us a little bit?
I'm in Zionsville.
Oh, just south of us. You're down by Indy. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. What? Do you have a church there?
Traders Point.
We have lots of dads from Traders Point that come to dad camp.
That's so cool.
Yes. So yeah, Traders Point, Northview Church, two of the bigger churches in Indianapolis. They love dad camp. So we have great partnerships with them.
That's awesome.
Yep. Yes, sir.
So what happened to the revival in Haiti?
What happened to it?
Yeah.
So they didn't do it the next night because there was just everything that happened. The village where we were really took it personally. Haitians are very familial, and so us getting attacked kind of in their backyard, at least that village, it really hurt them too. It was pretty amazing. So that morning, it happened at midnight, and by, gosh, I get my times wrong now, Bridget, but probably by 7 or 8 in the morning, we were on flights home, not on commercial flights. A miraculous story, there's a private company in Indiana called Bex. It's a seed company. They had a private jet in the Grand Cayman Islands, and a guy on the team with me was an employee of Bex. He got a hold of the company's president. They said, we'll send the company jet from Grand Cayman into Haiti. It's a 9-passenger. There were 14 of us. They flew in and then you have to get access to the runways and to the airports. You can't just fly a plane into an international airport without prior access. I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that they paid more than 6 figures in money to the Haitian authorities, because it's so corrupt, to get access to that runway, and they brought their plane in. We never got a bill. We never got asked for anything. That's what that company did for us. Now, again, it may not have been 6 figures, but I know there was some money involved. But they came in, picked up 9 of us, and we had to go in. We had to climb through a fence outside of the airport. Like, we were like 4 guys that are like barely walking, or 2 guys are barely walking. They're wounded. They're like, don't show that you're hurt. Don't show, like, just walk in. We're going to kind of cut it around this corner, and we're just going to kind of like walk onto this plane. And so 9 of us got taken to Fort Lauderdale. The guy turned around and flew back to Haiti, picked up the other 5, brought them to Fort Lauderdale, took the original 9 from Fort Lauderdale to Kokomo, Indiana, flew back from Kokomo to Fort Lauderdale, picked up the other 5, and flew back. So this guy put in some serious flight time, this pilot. And I said to him afterwards, I said, how are you doing this? Because, I mean, he was going on, like, I was like without sleeping. And he goes, I always knew God was going to give me a mission as a charter pilot that was something way bigger than me. And he goes, now I know, this is my mission. He goes, I'll fly it. How many more? I'll just keep flying. He goes, this won't stop. But anyway, it was an amazing story. So what happened so they didn't do it the next night, but I think they did pick it up the night after that, and they finished it out. We were almost to the end. There was like 1 or 2 nights left, but they did finish it out. I don't know what happened really a whole lot, because we were in crisis mode and all that. But I know that they kept going what we had helped them start. But yeah, a lot of people got saved. I know that. It was pretty amazing to be part of that prior to the attack happening. Yes, sir. Sam.
So you did, like as, I guess, trinkets for the camp, or like, I can't think of the word. You did like the picture frames and then the
Yep.
wood blocks.
Yes.
Do you do those? Is that every dad camp? It's the same thing, or?
So the highlight of every dad camp is we encourage, we want to remind dads how much they matter. We want to encourage and inspire them to return to their families. We want to equip them with new tools for their tool belt, as we'll say. But the highlight of every moment at dad camp is a moment between his child, his son or his daughter. Basically, it's a blessing moment. And so this particular dad camp, there was a little plaque with our logo on it, and then on the back it was blank. And our theme was legacy. It was all about what is the legacy, good or bad? What are the things that you're passing on to your kids as a dad? What are the things you've received from your father that you're now passing on to your kids that maybe need to stop? You need to draw a line in the sand and get some healing from, get some forgiveness from. And what are the great things that you're passing on? Thinking about those things. And then they wrote a promise to their kids of, this is the legacy I want to leave to you. This is what I'm committing to you. And then he looked them in the eyes and presented that, gave them that peace. And now those kids have that for the rest of their lives. They've got a promise from their dad of the father that he desires to be for their remaining time. So it's pretty powerful. But yes, every single year the content changes. And so then we change the type of blessing as well that the dad gives to his kids. Sometimes it's one-on-one. Sometimes it's done as a team. 3-4 dads will do it together and they'll bless their kids together. Sometimes it's a big, large group setting where dads are going to bless each one of their daughters in a really special way. We'll have a princess dinner or a knighting ceremony for a father and a son. But every year, that child gets a different piece. And so one of the stories I tell is a very personal story. But when my son, who got married last year, but when he went off to college, so it had been his freshman year of college, and we moved him in, and my wife and I dropped him off. And we left, and he went to Indiana Wesleyan University, and so faith-based school. And so the next day they said, come back and go to a church service with your freshmen, and you can pray with them, and then you need to leave. And so we came back and did that with him, and then we went up to his room just to say goodbye. And I walked into his room, and he had one little nightstand, a little bigger than that he could put some of his personal things on. And I walked in, and he had unpacked between when my wife and I had dropped him off the day before. He'd unpacked his stuff. He had 3 roommates, 4 guys in a room. And I walked in, and on his little dresser were 4 or 5 of the different things that I had given him at dad camp over the years. And talk about, I'll tell you what, guys, someday when you're moms and dads, but you walk in to see something like that, I was a wreck. And so I had to turn out, go out in the hallway, collect myself and my tears for a minute, but just to see that that's what he wanted to show to the world. That's what he wanted to be reminded of each and every day, were things that I'd spoken into his life and spoken over him and be reminded of. That's what mattered to him. And he had one little family picture, and our first dad camp photo, that photo in that frame, he had his very first one when he was 8 years old, sitting there as well. And so yeah, it's a powerful thing for dads to bless their kids and for kids to receive that. I don't know if you've ever received something like that from your fathers, but if you have, I know you probably know what I'm talking about. So I know I did not get that from my dad. I had a good dad. My dad was a legacy changer, was a generational changer. My grandfather was not a good man, and when my dad had me, my mom and dad had me, they said things are going to be different. Not on my watch will my son have to go through what I had to go through in my life. And so I'm very, very thankful for the father that I had, because he changed everything for me. And it's the reason I can stand here today and be passionate about it, because I've seen it play out in my own life. I've seen my dad took a stand to be different than my grandfather, and I've seen how it's impacted me and my faith and my walk and how I am as a man and a father today. And so I want to just share that with as many people as I can. So, but yeah, that's... I give long answers to short questions, but I get fired up.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thank you. Dinner time.